I apologize for that. So we're on the conversation of the master plan anyway. So with that said,
Just click continue. Oh, we have to click that there.
With that said, the idea of this particular resilient master plan, as we've presented in the past, is the action plan, which are those actionable strategies, and technical papers, which the committee has reviewed, along with the implementation matrix, which are those strategies that have been combined into a digestible format. That matrix, if you recall from the implementation workshop, are the strategies that we had those exercises with regarding the specific themes that have come out of this particular process. I think from the beginning, we were working with the context of not necessarily presenting the ideas coming from the community through a very formulaic, rigid, elemental strategy, which was, ensuring that we were complying with the regulatory requirements of Mass General Law with specificity to the elements that are required in the master plan, but rather utilizing the master plan process to address those items, but through naturally occurring themes. And so the matrix that you have are the compilation of those particular strategies and themes. With that said, the technical paper, which is 96 pages, is the content which has informed the particular master plan process. So with that said, the conversation, and I did have a conversation with both Josh and Mary this morning with regards to how to incorporate that, whether or not in the actual plan or as a supplement to that plan and print it out, but how to incorporate those technical papers within the context of a very splashy visual plan. And I just want to share with you, as we are still working on the splashy visual plan, what that currently looks like with regards to the...
And if I could just clarify too, the technical papers are the chapters of the plan that we wrote previously, and we shared them with you, and you reviewed and commented on them, and we edited them and revised them. And then what we did with the chapters was we took out the goals and we took out the recommendations. And so the technical papers are the data analysis that was basically the problem statement and the data. And they're easy to look up because they're sorted by the 9 required chapters of a master plan. So if somebody wants to know, well, what are the land use issues in Blandford, they can go to the technical paper. If they want to know what are the problems, they look at the technical papers. If they want to know what are the solutions, they look at the 40-page version of the plan or the implementation matrix.
And so, yes, thank you, Catherine.
And then the other product is the story map, which is still there.
Correct.
Just to say.
So right now we are working off this graphical plan, which is the visual implementation document. And I'm just going to see if I can make this full screen. I think this is the best that I can do here. So,
shall I turn off the lights to see if we can see it a little better? Okay.
So we have taken into account
Oh, it's just the sun.
the
I live here and I didn't recognize that. Sorry, Kim.
no, thank you. We have taken into account the photos that have been given to us with regards to either incorporation into the technical paper or within this plan. So we have these beautiful photos that will inform, the context of the plan. And I think as we've examined, and I'm just scrolling through the pages as it's currently drafted, This is Peter's photo from the photo contest. But as we go through this plan, and this is probably the most telling portion of this particular plan and what actually is in the contents of it. So with regards to Catherine's explanation of this implementation book, here in this visual plan, we have the introduction, a vision, Blandford in context, which is kind of the overarching themes, laying out the themes, and then the plan framework, which describes how the plan is laid out, with particular icons that will allow you to utilize with regards to how those themes have addressed the elements, the 8 elements that are in the plan. And then within also this plan, you have now the 5 themes that we've arrived at: community pride and rural community competitiveness, living with wildlife and nature, hidden stories and rich history, balanced and sustainable growth, community interconnections and roots. And then we have an implementation section on how to go about doing that, and then acknowledgements, and then the conversation after this brief presentation is whether or not the technical papers need to be in this plan. So as I mentioned, this is currently the draft, which has incorporated the text of some of the various documents that we have had with regards to this particular process. So we have the vision, mission, and objectives that the committee has come up with. We have the framework. As I mentioned, these are the 8 elements, and these are the 8 technical papers that you've received. And so within each of these is the problem statements, is the issues and opportunities that Catherine has outlined when she briefly discussed that. And so this is a graphic which basically shows that within these themes, these are the various statutory elements that are within those themes. So if you take a look at the cursor here, we have, in rural community pride and rural community competitiveness, we have land use and economic development as statutory elements that are addressed within this particular theme. And so that goes to the rest of them. With that said, we have the Blandford in context, which has outlined some of the overarching thoughts and ideas that we have come across with regards to how we've set the scene, for lack of a better term, with regards to the implementable strategies. So growth, large-scale developments, town center, senior citizens, community resilience. And then we have the community engagement, and have outlined the community engagement in this section with regards to survey results, providing that, providing the community visioning session, talking about the focus groups, talking about the implementation workshop, and that's it for this particular draft. So as I mentioned, after this section comes the each of the themes which will have the strategies laid out from that point, and then finishing off the rest of the plan. This particular plan is the implementation section and the acknowledgements, and whether or not we want to have the technical papers within this document.
What is that giant pile of paper you have there?
So I actually made like 4 copies for whoever was here.
Oh, okay.
Of that, so that's that. That's the.
I would personally, since the Resilient Master Plan is based largely on the technical implements, I think it should be included with the document, maybe as an addendum.
Yeah.
So that you can reference back and forth, you don't have to go find something. Also, Josh and I were discussing earlier this morning, perhaps a cover paragraph that talks about the extraordinary circumstances that existed for PVPC in Blandford as this plan was put together.
That's a good idea.
You know, just to have accomplished it, it's remarkable with pandemic ongoing.
Yeah, we have an acknowledgements page that for some reason in the outline was at the end, but I think we would bump it to the beginning. And that's where we could say
And-
that, as well as thank you to EOEA for the funding and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
But the idea would be like 100 years from now,
right, exactly.
whoever pulls up this
Right,
report,
exactly.
They
that-
need to know.
They need
the
to know,
global
yeah.
history of
Absolutely,
the
that's a
pandemic,
great point, yeah.
and that we
You don't
did-
want to thank the pandemic.
No,
No.
it's not necessarily a thank you, but just
Absolutely not.
say, hey, this master plan was done in the middle of a pandemic. Just kind of it helps describe
Yeah,
what the people of today were dealing with when they were putting this plan together.
And then somebody can truly appreciate the effort and the amount of work that went into it, because it was a lot.
Yeah,
yeah, that's a
that's a
idea.
great point. And I think that, you know, it definitely has been addressed, not necessarily in the context of it being front and center, which I think it needs to be front and
Yes.
center.
Can you
So,
stop sharing so we can see them better?
yeah. So that's a great note. Thank you, Mary.
Do you all on the computer have any comments? Guess not.
Will we see between now and June 30th, the final draft?
Yes,
Okay,
you will see that. So
because you wanted us to make any comments between now and June 30th.
if you are reviewing the technical papers to ensure that it reflects what it needs to, please send those to me, like if you can look at it this weekend. But because that exists as its own, it's relatively easy to not, you know, have to format
That
it.
doesn't affect. the
Yeah, it
plan.
doesn't affect the actual plan development, because the plan development is through the context of the community engagement and the implementable strategies we've already identified.
When do you anticipate we'll get the rest of this thing?
That will probably be Monday or Tuesday.
And it's really just our graphic designers taking the pieces and putting them together, so we
Right.
can't rush him. Unfortunately, we got him the stuff a little bit late, so he's just putting it together and he just has to do his graphic design magic. But it's nothing, it's no content that you haven't already seen. It's just photos and images, you know, it's all the same content, but it's beautifully designed with, you know, images behind the text and, you know, borders and all that kind of stuff, but it won't be any content that you haven't seen.
And then after June 30th, it goes to the planning board.
At their meeting, they're gonna vote on it, whether they adopt it and then recommend, I mean, they adopt it and the select board does not have to adopt it.
Okay.
Yeah, so as far as the next steps, yes, Catherine is correct that as I consult for the planning board, I have suggested that it goes on their July 7th agenda. If they're having a meeting that day, I think that's the case, they are having a meeting. But it would require the planning board to adopt that. Do you know that they're not meeting, or?
Dash and I were just talking about that.
Okay.
That's why
Okay.
Yes, they will be meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not, I think Monday we're closed, right? Or-
Yeah, the holiday.
The Monday's the
Yeah,
holiday, 5th.
July 5th, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, I think, you know, as part of this process, as we were closing out a similar process in another time that we're doing the master plan, you know, the planning board chair who we also presented to at that meeting, really found it thoughtful for the people that participated to identify, you know, as being part of this particular process and learning from your fellow residents, if there was anything that you've identified during this public process that changed your thoughts regarding certain aspects of development, certain aspects of preservation, community engagement. So that was a question. And so if you learned anything new, I guess is a simpler way to put it. And, and then the group also talked about the momentum and carrying the momentum to ensure that the implementation matrix is followed and go through the process of implementing through the various boards and committees, and coming up with the process and ensuring that process continues. But yeah, I leave it to any further questions regarding this particular process. As I mentioned to Mary and Josh, if with regards to seeing the final plan, you think that we need to engage in a virtual meeting, we can do that. Otherwise, working with Josh and Mary to review that draft or receive any comments that need to be addressed within that draft between the next week, we can
Before Wednesday, at
Yeah.
the end of the day on Wednesday.
we can do that.
And how many copies of the printed version do you
All right.
want?
And we're providing prints too, so
I want one for the library, please, one for the historical
the
society.
clerk.
One for the clerk, your office.
And do the members of the committee want one for their own personal libraries?
Well, I would.
Yeah,
I'd like to have one to be able to look at it.
yeah. I mean, you put a lot of effort into it. Do the three of you want your own copy?
Certainly.
Okay.
How, obviously, this is going to be a monumental job. How many copies do you think would be realistic? 50?
Yeah.
Is that too many?
No, we were thinking 25, but then when you list off, the places you want to have it around town, 50 is
Yeah.
fine.
Quick question, after the planning board approves this,
Mhm.
it's filed with the state at some point?
No, this is actually the town's document, so it's required.
But the state doesn't want it?
No,
No,
the
the
state,
state's gonna have a copy. The Executive Office of Energy and Environmental
Oh, okay.
Affairs is gonna
as
get,
far as the grant,
it's gonna
yes.
have the plan, it's gonna have the
Yeah, that's my
OSRP,
question.
it's gonna have the regulatory review. They'll be all available for any other town that wants to see, like, hey, what did Blandford do? They can download it, they'll be able to look at it, they'll be
State
able to
library.
copy it. They can replicate it, so they'll all go right to the state and they'll be up on the state website.
Yeah, so as Bob mentioned, the plan, when finalized, will be sent to the granting office that provided the grant to us. But normally, if it wasn't provided to the grant, it would just be a town document. And you're going to use that for your grant applications. You're going to use that for, your various initiatives that you're going to look at as that support.
Just a semantic question. When it's presented to the planning board, will they accept it, adopt it, or approve it? Or all three?
I've
Is
seen.
there a difference?
I don't think there's a difference because I've seen other communities you interchange those words.
Okay.
So I think within the draft of the introduction, it's suggested that the planning board has adopted it.
Okay.
So I think as far as a motion, we'll suggest that.
Thank you.
Yes, adopted by the planning board. Yeah, I don't know if there's any other questions with regards to this
Well,
particular.
Yeah, I was just wondering,
process.
Ken, as you asked that question about, was there anything that struck you that you learned about the town, or was there anything surprising to all of you through this process?
Maybe not so much a surprise, but just the affirmation that the population wants to remain rural.
But yes,
Yeah.
Yeah, the population that we've heard from.
Yeah, the population is, yeah, here's some of the good chunk.
I'm sorry, I can never hear when Mary is speaking. Can somebody either repeat it or?
Sorry, Judy.
I'm sorry.
As I said, this doesn't so much come as a surprise, but an affirmation that the population that we heard from really wants to see that Blandford stays a rural community. That's all.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. A lot of the survey results suggest that. I think the recommendations that we've come across and discussed, I think also help support that idea with regards to ensuring that the land that the town residents really prize and really treasure remains such, or, if there happens to be development, that you really are paying attention to ensuring that it's not, those trees are not going to be taken down just because, right? So you have to ensure that hopefully the town will act on these policies that have been identified through this regulatory review and process that will help assist the town in ensuring that. So I think it's a double, with it, in addition to the plan stating outright, you have now regulations in the pipeline that hopefully will be explored, that will continue to address.
And
Preserve.
another thing that I don't think I had even considered or thought much about was the desire, again, on behalf of the population that we heard from, for senior citizen housing. That came through loud and clear.
Yeah, and I think, that is exactly what the master plan process has hopefully come across. And I think, the town will continue to explore ways to either make it easier to develop that type of housing, explore ways to ensure that that type of housing is the one that's being developed, within the context of the approvals that a planning board or a ZBA or a conservation commission would have to approve. But yeah, no, that's some great insight.
I looked up the Mass General Law just to see if they had the language about approve, adopt, or accept.
Oh, what's it say?
It just says a majority vote of the planning board. It leaves out the verb. But it does say that you're supposed to submit a copy to DHCD.
Oh.
That if a town develops a plan, which is not required, but if you do develop one, it does say you're supposed to submit it to the Department of Housing.
Well, that's news to me, Catherine. We're
Yeah.
gonna do that.
Yeah,
So
I
keep
would,
it a
glad
secret.
you asked that.
I would send one to the state library as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Great.
I don't know if anyone had any other insights. This could possibly be our last meeting.
How do we showcase this to the community?
Well, I think as Catherine and I were on a call with Josh, a week ago when we postponed this meeting to today, with regards to either utilizing the planning board as an informal introduction of the master plan, the planning board adopting that, and then working with Josh to figure out a way on how to either, a separate community event or through a select board agenda, I'm not sure, but I think
Who's
that's
the
an
one who
opportunity.
works for the Country Journal? Is it you?
Mary?
Oh, so then why don't we just do an article in the Country Journal?
Sure.
I could write it. I mean, I could draft something. I know you're gonna write it because you're the journalist, but do you wanna have the burden of writing it? Because it would be fantastic.
If you want to give me what you think is
I was gonna say
critical.
that we should interview you, but you're the one who's writing the article, but, who wants to
we got
give
Joanne,
some quotes for the vice chair?
the vice chair, or
How about everybody who's here?
yeah, and
These are the core
Chips
people
and
who have been at
Chips
most
and
meetings.
Bob,
Yeah, Chips and Bob and Margaret and Judith.
and Margaret and Judy have always been,
Yeah, they're the really.
and it wouldn't hurt to get a quote from conservation either,
Yeah,
because they did a tremendous amount of work.
Or from
Yeah.
Josh.
Oh,
Josh has good words.
but don't you think, I mean, if it was like a big article in the Country Journal,
Sure.
most people would read that, and then they would know, like, oh, but how
And-
many people read it?
an unusual picture of the town.
I think a lot of people get that magazine, right?
Yeah.
That newspaper.
Yep.
Yeah. It's easy to get. A lot of all the stores carry it, so.
So I think, Josh, that we're probably going to do the article that hopefully will shine a light on this particular process, but
And it'll all be up on
Yeah.
on your website, so if you could put, once the final products, you know, you have the story map, obviously, which is all electronic, but then have the PDF of the plan with the appendices, with the implementation chart. But the story map, you know, should be the most interesting for people to play around with.
right.
And then there'll be a set number of plans available if people want to come in and read them in paper, or you'll probably end up with 10 or 15 that you don't need. and
We can put 2 or 3 at the library just for general
Yeah.
perusal, but one kept sacred.
One archive.
Yeah.
Archived, yes, thank you. Because the old one is over there.
Oh, it is.
Yes,
Yeah, are there any comments from the three of you on this call with regards to this particular process or the where we're at? You know, how you
Chips is
felt
being unusually quiet.
What's
about
the
this
matter?
process.
Let us know, Chip.
Muted. You're mute, Elder.
I'm unmuted now. No, the Historical Society would love to put it in our archives for sure. But, and otherwise, I have no brilliant things to add.
I mean, I just want to say that I appreciate all of your efforts.
Yeah.
Obviously, Mary, Joanne, and the three of you, and Bob, who has been on all the calls, and obviously Josh as our partner in getting this completed. I think, in addition to the Resilient Master Plan, the Open Space Plan, which will be posted to your website, at least the draft for this community review, and the regulatory items, I think Blandford has truly addressed, or Blandford is on its way to addressing how to ensure resiliency in the town. And I think that these particular projects have really allowed Blandford to think outside of the box with regards to, you know, developing and thinking of some neat ideas on how to increase development, addressing housing, and preservation of your particular open spaces. But yeah, I think other than that, I have all but, you know, just thankful words for the committee that has helped Catherine and I and our team put together, you know, this plan.
Yeah, great job to all of
Yeah,
you,
thank you.
especially Mary and Joanne for shepherding the whole thing along. Mary especially.
didn't do a thing.
Thank you, guys.
No, they did it all.
Yeah, and
Hold on.
for our faithful followers over there.
Chips, you were gonna say something.
I just say, well done, everybody.
I'd like to thank everybody that's worked on this. It's been a long process, and I'm just hoping that something wonderful comes of it. And so that's my, it's not a fear, but a hope that some of these ideas come to fruition, and that, I don't know, the planning board thinks ahead and something comes of our ideas that we've put together. I don't know. I'm hopeful.
And stay connected. We have the local technical assistance program because all of our member municipalities can call email anytime and say, we need help on X, Y, Z. And it's just 3 days of our staff time, but that's enough to write a grant or, move some idea forward. So you can contact Ken or me anytime for any aspect. And if it's not land use or environment, we'll connect you with our colleagues, throughout the agency, because the technical assistance is across all, you can talk to Shannon Walsh that way, you can talk to Gary or Andy. So, and we are obviously extremely knowledgeable, just as Josh is, but we don't have all the responsibilities of running a town like Josh does. So if there's any piece of it that you want to move forward on, we know where the funding is to move it forward. And so if there's any frustration or, something's not happening as quickly as you want it to, let us know and we can help you to try to accelerate it. So stay in touch. I mean, that's part of what I love about doing these planning processes is, you really get to know one of our member communities better than we did before. And now we know people and we know boards and we know commission, so stay in touch and let us help you to keep moving forward.
Margaret and I may be coming forward soon, right, Margaret, with some, I beat you to it.
Yeah, I know. We just can't seem to control ourselves.
I know.
But I would like to say thank you to all of you for all your hard work and the hours you have put into this. I think it's wonderful. And I, like Judy, hope to see a lot of this process come through. And, to show that we can all work together and keep moving forward and seeing the community grow in the areas that it really needs to keep the entire population happy.
Well said.
So with that said, as Catherine mentioned at the early part of the meeting, the town will be getting these plans. We'll have a story map that will be permanent. You have the project website that will have all the documents on it. So you will have all of the resources, at least digitally. If there's something that hasn't been uploaded, we'll ensure that it gets uploaded. But those are going to be resources for you forever that you can use as you need.
Okay, and that link is, if we could somehow get that more prominently located on the website. On the town website, yeah,
Okay.
with flashing banners or something.
Yeah, we can
So
work
people
with.
will take a look
Yeah,
at
we
it.
can work with Josh on that and doing that.
Just so that they know the volume of effort that
Yeah,
went into
it's
this.
very important. I mean, you're gonna want to continue to celebrate and ensure that people know of all of your effort over the past year. So it's very important to make sure that it stays alive, that it's kept updated, and that we just continue to assist with that process.
Maybe next year when the 200-year party, we could somehow figure out how to have like a scavenger hunt or something where there's information only in the master plan that people haven't find.
That's not a bad idea.
Some way to get people to actually look at it.
Chips, are you taking notes?
All right, well, I'm gonna bring some cookies over to the library on my way back to Springfield.
Thank you.
I might grab a couple.
Yes, please do.
Can I
Anybody
get a
has
copy
people
of your,
at
Oh,
home
yeah.
who
of
want
your,
cookies?
I will leave Josh the copies that I have here for those who want it, but just know that it's going to be in your final plan too.
Okay, and that's the technical element stuff.
The technical element.
How come I have this massive?
Did you do it on
Is it
one
more
side?
than
No,
once?
they're on both sides, and I only printed one.
Then you printed it twice?
I wonder if it printed
Did I
twice.
pick yours too? It looks like
You
I've
know
got-
what, you did, because I printed mine and I
Oh.
said, did I not push that print button again? If I had a nickel for
Oh,
every
so
time
I-
I don't
So
push
you
that
have two
print button,
copies.
and then I walk into the other room, and then I walk all the way back.
Cause I
So
went
you
into
took
Josh and I
copies.
said, what is this? And I've got an inch worth of paper here. Okay, glad we took.
Would you like to take anything else?
No, thank you.
Oh, wait, you have to adjourn the meeting.
So Mary,
Mary, you need to adjourn the meeting.
You can't leave. We're stuck to our chairs.
Overriding
Right,
authority.
when I'm trying to speak.
All right.
See everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Jumble.
Bye, everybody.
Meeting is adjourned.
Really well. When I know somebody, that's usually.